Welcome to America's Commercial Real Estate Show, your source for market intel, forecast, and strategies. Hello, I'm Michael Bull. Thank you for being with us. Our show today is brought to you by the C5 Summit. This is the CCIM plus it's C5 plus CCIM Summit. I'll get it right. I've been going every year. I should know it right. But this is a great summit. It's in Chicago this year. It's September 16th through September 18th. And if you've been there, you're going back, I'm sure. If you haven't, check it out. You can learn more at c5summit.realestate. Well, our show today is another good one. People are curious about what's going on in the commercial real estate industry overall. Where are we, with tariffs, with the interest rates that shot up, with them kind of staying higher for longer, activity starting to pick up on transactions. In a lot of cases, the tenant traffic starting to improve in most all property types. REITs have kind of gone through some fluctuation with all of this. What's happening with REITs? What we should expect moving forward? And what about just the overall real estate forecast and what might happen? Well, let's find out from a CEO of a REIT. Please welcome my guest. It's Anthony Coniglio. He's CEO of Newlake Capital Partners. Anthony, good to see you, sir.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, thank you. And Newlake Capital Partners, you guys are traded on the OTC exchange. It's your ticker is what? NLCP, right?
Yes, that's correct. Newlake Capital Partners, NLCP.
Awesome. And, I want you to tell the listeners kind of what you guys mainly focus on, because a lot of our investors are looking for niches in the market, whether it's to privately be involved in real estate or through the REIT markets. And you guys have a particular interesting piece of the real estate world.
We do. We started our business 6 years ago, focused exclusively on the cannabis sector. And as we sit here today, we are now the second largest owner of cannabis real estate in the U.S. We own 34 properties across 12 states, and those properties are cultivation facilities and dispensaries. And so when we say cultivation facility, some people think outdoor. It's not that. It's not farmland. Think industrial real estate. Think of 100,000 square foot industrial building that's either purpose fit or retrofitted to have indoor cultivation of cannabis. And then dispensaries, think your typical retail location for the dispensing of state legal cannabis.
Interesting. So how is that industry going as far as legalization and of recreational, and then so what's the trend now? What's going on?
The long-term trend really is reflective of what the population in the U.S. believes should be legalized cannabis. There have been polls over the last decade from both Pew and Gallup that show that roughly 90% of the American people believe cannabis should be legalized for medical purposes, and roughly 2/3 of those polled believe cannabis should be legalized for recreational purposes. And so where that leaves us today is roughly 40 states have medical cannabis programs, and you have about 24 states that have recreational cannabis programs. And today, as we sit here, roughly 52% of our population resides in a state with a recreational program. And so we continue to see states adopt new programs, such as Kentucky recently adopted a new medical marijuana program, and that'll be launching later this year. We've seen Texas a couple of weeks ago expanded their medical marijuana program, and we're excited for the patients in Texas. And today you have Pennsylvania talking about converting their medical marijuana program into a recreational program, much like Ohio did last year or Illinois did a couple of years ago, just to name a few. And so the industry's been growing well, given some of these state activations and the continued rollout, but it's had some headwinds. The industry took on too much debt back in a big growth spurt back in 2021, and has seen increasing competition from what are called hemp-derived products. Hemp was legalized in the Farm Bill a few years ago, and some entrepreneurial people have figured out how you can synthetically create THC, which is that psychoactive ingredient in cannabis. It's what gets you high. They figured out how to use hemp to synthetically manufacture THC, and it's taking some sales away from the industry. It's quite controversial since it's not age gated, it's unregulated, and it's untested. So the industry isn't without some headwinds as we sit here today, but I think the long term growth trend is intact, and we'll see it continue to grow into the years ahead.
And federally, is it still a no-no?
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing as we sit here today. Federally, this is still a Schedule 1 drug. And to compare that, say, to heroin, which is a Schedule 2 drug. So for those that don't familiarize themselves with our Controlled Substances Act scheduling requirements, Schedule 1 is something that would be no medical impact and highly, highly addictive. And so you would compare fentanyl to marijuana because they're both on Schedule 1. And so right now the DEA has a proposal to reschedule to Schedule 3. That would put it on a level of Tylenol with codeine. That would be a meaningful reform if the DEA does conclude that rescheduling process. But yes, as we sit here today, it is still federally illegal to produce or possess cannabis.
Interesting. So years ago, I was in Colorado, and I thought, oh, it's recreational available. I've got to go in one of these stores, and I was in one of the stores, and it was pretty amazing to see the business. And as I recall, though, it was cash only that they were doing there at that time. Tell us about banking for these businesses.
Yeah, banking is very difficult by and large for the cannabis businesses. There is banking available. And there's the Treasury Department puts out a report quarterly, and there's roughly 600 banks that provide what I would call basic business services to the operators in the industry. So think your basic business checking or wire services. Few banks will provide loans, but not many. But of the 450,000 people that are employed in the cannabis industry in the US, it's extremely difficult for them to do basic banking services. So, for instance, if you want to go out and get a mortgage, Fannie and Freddie will not accept income from a cannabis business as a qualifying income. And so it's extremely difficult for these individuals to find mortgages to be able to buy a home. Additionally, personal loans are difficult for a similar reason. You'll also have higher fees on accounts. JP Morgan, Bank of America, the other large national banks won't allow you to have a checking or savings account where you receive your direct deposit from a cannabis business. And so it continues today to be an issue. And as we've seen in the first 6 months of this administration, the administration is very focused on debanking for the crypto market, debanking for other industries, oil and gas, guns, et cetera. And cannabis is also in that dialogue. And so that industry's also been debanked. Again, I want to say 450,000 people employed in the cannabis industry, many of which are locked out of regular way banking in this country, which is really just a travesty.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's a growing industry with more and more states approving things, right?
Yes, states continue to roll on. I think we've been hamstrung as an industry from being able to have clinical trials because of the scheduling as a Schedule 1 drug. And that's part of why we need it moved to Schedule 3 so we can get more definitive clinical trials. But anecdotally, we continue to hear, and I think most of your listeners probably know somebody that's used cannabis as an alternative to an opiate, cannabis as a way to treat insomnia or as a way to treat nausea for cancer patients. We've seen it for multiple sclerosis and many other modalities that people are more and more turning to this natural plant-based medicine in order to stay away from pharmaceuticals and opiates that really have significantly adverse effects on individuals and in many cases get them addicted.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised. I met an elderly gentleman, church, and never done kind of any really drugs or anything in his entire life. And he's telling me about the edibles and that has never been able to sleep right, and then it's just changed his life. He got the right dose, and it's just changed his life for the good.
It really, I see it all the time when I go into dispensaries. Everyone thinks it's just stoners that are standing in line for dispensaries. And
Mhm,
in the adult use segments, there's certainly a portion of the customer base that's there. But
mhm,
I also see people who look like they're in obvious pain, whether it be
mhm,
mental fatigue, whether it be PTSD for veterans. I see people in the middle of the day going out to get their medicine, not going out to get a six pack and get high or get whatever type of relaxation they're looking for.
mhm.
So I think it's an important medicine for us to have. And what we also don't realize is we all have inside of our bodies something called an endocannabinoid system. And there's research going on globally to help map the endocannabinoid system that we have and the receptors we have with the various components that are existent inside of cannabis. And so as you see the ability to do more research, we're going to be able to get more targeted medicine. And it's that endocannabinoid system and the receptors there that react with the cannabis properties that get you those medicinal benefits. And quite frankly, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. We could do an entire show on why the politics of the 1960s created the war on drugs. And I was a skeptic when I first started looking at this 6 years ago, but having gone deep and researched it, I think people would be stunned to find out how this was. It ostracized entire communities and outlawed a plant based on political motivations and discriminatory motivations. But enough said on that. My point being that there are tremendous medical properties. We need Schedule 3 to get more research so we can have the clinical trials to prove it.
All right. Well, my audience would be really mad at you if I didn't ask you this question. So, and with your background and your research, I know you know the answer. So, back in the day when the Indians, the American Indians, were brought people in to smoke a peace pipe, what was in that peace pipe, Anthony?
Well, that was the Welcome to America strain. I don't know, but what you want to go back to early America, the hemp plant was on some of our early currency. Hemp was a meaningful industry in the Southeast in the early American days. And cannabis has been consumed for thousands of years, goes all the way back to Eastern medicine. Thousands of years ago, people were recognizing the medical benefits of cannabis and the cannabis plant. There's also industrial benefits to the plant as well for rope, for textiles. Even people are making hempcrete out of it now. It's the intoxicating piece that's probably the more controversial in the discussion.
Sure. Well, look, as a CEO of a big real estate company, you obviously track the economy and the market and what's going on. If you think about Anthony, just the overall investing in commercial real estate, existing properties around the U.S. right now, where do you think we are in the cycle? What advice would you give folks?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a homer here, but I think it's a good time to get into REITs in general. I think REITs have been oversold due to the move in rates that we've experienced over nearly the last 10 months or so. I think it's been an overreaction. I think it's somewhat fueled by the previous correlation between REITs and the 10-year that was a function of a greater amount of leverage that REITs were carrying in previous cycles. And when I look across the REIT industry today, by and large, I see a more responsible level of leverage. I see a more laddering of maturities, and I see more stable balance sheets than you had in previous cycles. And so, therefore, I do think there's been an overreaction in the pricing action generally for REITs. Layer in the fact that I do think that we're going to continue to have a good economy in this country. I think from a real estate perspective, with the onshoring that's expected and the higher replacement costs for the buildings that do exist, I think we're going to continue to see robust demand for the existing stock of real estate. And I think we're going to see a firmness in pricing for tenancy. And so I think right now is a really good entry point to get yield with some good protection for investors from a dynamics or fundamentals perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, when the interest rate started spiking, the new developments started slowing down. If it was started, it probably finished, right? And a lot of those have really been delivered. Are you seeing in some of the markets you're studying that rents are starting to rise yet, or is it still kind of around the corner?
Well, in our market, rent is really more a function of cost of capital and alternatives.
Mhm.
There aren't many organizations that focus on the cannabis sector, so I can't even pretend that it's a well-trafficked sector where you have a true market that has price discovery to it. The cannabis sector continues to have risks, as I was talking about previously, and so therefore you'll find that cap rate premiums, and we're a triple net lease REIT, I should have mentioned.
Mhm.
And so you'll find that the premiums that we're getting could be anywhere from 400 to 600 basis points above what the market level is. Again, that's a function of the risk profile of the industry and the cost of capital for the few of us that do provide real estate capital to the sector.
Hmm. Interesting. What would you leave our audience with to think about related to just kind of commercial real estate REITs or cannabis?
Yeah, I'd say given you listen, you just hit it, which was the higher rate environment has stalled new development. And if we believe that the economy is going to continue to march forward, and you believe that the what's happening with tariffs is going to rework a supply chain with more activity on U.S. soil, that means demand for commercial real estate should at least be stable, if not go up, into an environment that has little, if any, new supply coming in. So that's positive dynamics from a pricing perspective. From a rate perspective, looking at the balance sheets, I think by and large, well positioned. I mean, at least for Newlake, I'll just speak for us. I haven't come across a REIT that has less leverage than we do. We have 0.1% debt to EBITDA. We have $7 million outstanding on nearly $500 million of assets.
Mhm.
But again, the point is, by and large, these balance sheets are in a good place. While I don't see rates going down very soon, I also don't see them spiking up very soon. So I think we're in a market where one can look out at the horizon the next 2 to 3 years from a real estate perspective and feel somewhat confident in the ability to generate free cash flow.
Yeah. And I guess you add to that the kind of what inflation has done to construction cost, right?
Yeah, that's that replacement cost point for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. We just took out a building last week that probably cost 660 a foot to build it. We took it out at 64 a foot. I mean, like,
Unbelievable.
yeah, it's like buying existing product right now. It can be a great move. I think I agree with you. I think we're at a point in the cycle that with new supply to kind of just dropping off, that it might be time to get some new initiatives started to get some entitlements and build buildings that might come out of the ground in a couple of years at the right time, and also just buying existing. Well, Anthony, thanks for joining us. Have a great 4th of July weekend.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful 4th of July weekend yourself.
All right. Take care. Thank you. And thank you for joining us around the country. Please let us know what you think. Thanks for sharing the show, if you will. And I appreciate your comments. Please connect with us on your favorite social media. If you have an idea, question, thought, you need a referral, I'd be glad to help you out. I'll give you my email. It's an easy one. It's michael@bullrealty.com. Till next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh. And join us for America's Commercial Real Estate Show. America's Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Bull Realty. For commercial brokerage sales and leasing in the Southeast U.S., contact our show host by email at michael@bullrealty.com. By Commercial Agent Success Strategies, 21 incredible one-hour agent training videos. Learn more at commercialagentsuccess.com. By the 2025 C5 Plus CCIM Global Summit, the premier commercial real estate conference for networking, deal making, and investment. For more information, visit c5summit.realestate. For more podcasts and videos, subscribe and visit creshow.com.